So, good day everyone. We are the group 5 and we're going to be discussing the lesson 11, which is sexual behavior. So, for the reporting, the introduction will be reported by Hernanda Mergrace, which is me, and the sexual behavior will be reported by Eileen Lawis. Sexual response cycle will be reported by Angeline Lawis. Sexual response dysfunction will be reported by Leah Itaw, and paraphilias will be reported by Jean Idagdag and Kyle Libunaw. So in the early discussions of Group 4, they've mentioned the three primary components of psychology, which are affect, cognition, and behavior. So we use this as a framework to understand human sexuality, and it is only appropriate to explore the diversity of behaviors relevant to our understanding of human sexuality. So what is behavior? In simple terms, it refers to an action. These are the things that we usually do. So there are two behaviors, which are overt behavior and covert behavior. So in overt behavior, it refers to behavior or actions that are easily and directly observable. Examples of overt behavior includes running, dancing, arguing, smiling, frowning, and many more. Whereas covert behavior refers to behavior that is not observable, whereas examples of covert behavior includes thinking, dreaming, glandular responses, and many more. On a daily basis, we act because of a motivation. It is something that drives us to do something. And some psychologists believe that we behave as a response to stimuli. So for those who don't remember anymore about what is stimuli, it is an event in the environment that influences behavior. So other people believe that we do things because we want to achieve pleasure or avoid pain, because they think we want to achieve a goal towards the fulfillment of our own potentials and aspirations as a human in search of meaning. So what makes the behavior interesting is that they are readily measurable as opposed to feelings and thoughts. We can look at it as a frequency, or like how many times an action is done in a span of time, or we can also check it as duration, or how long does the action takes place, say in seconds, minutes, or hours. A behavior has an intensity, like the magnitude by which it is done. Is it forceful? Is it weak? Then there is diversity, like what are the varieties of a similar behavior done in a various context, or what are the different behaviors we are capable of depending on our physical characteristics.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Maylene Lawis, and today's lesson is all about sexual behaviors. So please be open-minded as I will discuss it to you. So sexual behaviors are actions that humans agree to interpret as an expression of their sexual motivations or intentions. It is important to remember that behaviors are given meaning by people. For instance, while hugging and kissing may be considered sexual in nature, this is not always be the case because the context of the behavior matters. Sexual behaviors are generally erotic behaviors. They involve any of the primary or secondary erotic zones. So we mentioned that body parts such as face, neck, genitalia, and chest, among others, are erogenous zones. So sexual behaviors can be typed according to the aim of the behavior. For instance, sexual behaviors such as masturbation or the stimulation of one's own genitals can be considered as autoerotic or the self-directed. So erotic motivations can also be directed to other people of the same sex or the opposite sex. So homoerotic behaviors are sexual behaviors oriented to the same sex. On the other hand, heterotic behaviors are used to refer sexual behaviors oriented to the other sex. Manipulations or the insertion of the penis to the vagina is necessary. So humans can assume two positions in this process. More common is a ventral position, which is the ventris abdomen, wherein the male and the female species are facing each other. Alternatively, a ventral dorsal position or the dorsum back may be assumed wherein the abdomen of the male species is facing to the dorsum of the female species, such as the insertion of the penis to the vagina is from behind. However, sexual behaviors do not only refer to copulations, the insertion of the penis to the vaginal orifice. They also include an array of non-copulatory sexual behavior such as kissing, hugging, and caressing. There are also sexual behaviors that involve oral stimulation of the genitals such as fellatio or the oral stimulation of the penis, or cunnilingus or the oral stimulation of the vagina. Then, there are also sexual behaviors involving stimulation or the penetration of the anal orifice, which is the anal sex.
Good day everyone, my name is Angeline Arlawis and today I'll be explaining to you the sexual response cycle, and I hope that you will be open-minded for this kind of topic. So for heterosexual couples, one of the ultimate goal of the sexual act is reproduction. This is made possibly through the fertilization of the ovum by a sperm, which necessitate ejaculations, means release of the sperm from the human male into the internal reproduction system of the human female. Before this ultimate process, both the human male and female undergoes a sequence of bodily changes which prepare them for the sexual climax. This sequence of changes is referred to as the sexual response cycle. And we have two models of sexual response cycle. It is Master and Johnson's model and Kaplan's model. First is Master and Johnson's model, 1966 and 1970, proposed that the following are four phases in the cycle. We have excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. First is the excitement. So the excitement phase is the first phase in the cycle. For the human male, goal of this phase is erection or tumescence, the elongation and stiffening of the penis, so that it can be efficiently inserted into the vagina. At this phase, the testes and scrotum start to elevate and some parts of the skin. Example is the breast and chest reddens, a phenomenon referred to as a sex flush. For the human female, the goal of this phase is lubrication, wetness of the vaginal orifice to facilitate insertion of the penis. The excitement phase is followed by the plateau phase. This phase is characterized by a sustained peak in stimulation of the organs. In the human male, the corona and glans penis become enlarged and reddish. In the human female, the outer vagina swells while the inner vagina expands and becomes elongated, creating the orgasmic platform or tenting. Next is the orgasm. The orgasm phase is the climax of the sexual response cycle. It is a stage of release wherein the human male achieves ejaculation and the human female is ready to receive the sperm for the possible fertilization. Lastly, the resolution. In the resolution phase, the male penis returns to its normal unerected phase, whereas the testes and the scrotum descend. In the human female, the outer and inner reproduction organs also relax. Next model is Kaplan model. Unlike Master and Johnson model, Kaplan's model 1979 sees the sexual response cycle as having relatively independent stages. The three phases of this model include desire, arousal, and orgasm. Desire is the physiological component of the sexual response. It involves sexual thoughts and feelings, which are necessary for a satisfying sexual experience. However, desire does not necessarily translate into action. Next is arousal. Arousal phase is the phase where the excitement and plateau, as defined by Masters and Johnson, take place. It is the physiological component of the sexual response wherein bodily changes occur as an outcome of sexual stimulation. Just like desire, arousal may not necessarily translate into orgasm. Lastly, on Kaplan's model is orgasm. Orgasm in Kaplan model is generally similar with that of the Masters and Johnson's model, except that this phase also include the resolution phase. In Kaplan's model, orgasm is the completion of the sexual response.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leia G. Itaw, and I will discuss to you about the sexual response dysfunction. Sexual dysfunction is a problem that can happen during any phase of sexual response cycle. It prevents you from experiencing satisfaction from sexual activity. Some people experience difficulty or problems in some of sexual ways in the following are the common sexual response dysfunction. First is sexual desire disorder. When an individual has low levels of desire or has aversion or sexual activities. Next is sexual arousal disorder. When an individual has problem in achieving necessary physiological or state for completion. Next is orgasm disorder. When an individual has problem in achieving organs or premature ejaculation among males of female organics disorder. Next is sexual pain disorder. When there is an experience of pain during the sexual response cycle.
Good day everyone, I'm Gianni Dagdag from 1YTMJO2 FM. To continue this lesson, I will discuss about the paraphilias. What is paraphilia? Paraphilia is any intense or persistent sexual interest other than sexual interest in genital stimulation or prematurely bonding with phenotypically normal, physically mature, consisting human partners, and also a pattern of recurring sexually accusing mental imagery or behavior that involves usually and physically, socially unstable practices. For more about phenotypically normal is the observable physically or biochemically characteristic of an organism and determined by both genetic makeup and environmental influences. Paraphilias is when an individual gets sexually accosted by an object, a person, or circumstances that are usually disorder or current intense sexually accusing fantasies or behavior that are distressing or disabling and that involve inanimate objects, children, or nonsense adults, or suffering or humiliation or the partners with the potential to accrue harm.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cal W. Libunaw. This is the continuation of the report of Miss Idagdag. There are some of common paraphilic disorders are as follows. First, exhibitionism. Pleasure from exposing one's genital to non-consenting people. The exhibitionist, almost always male, may obtain gratification from the reaction of disgust or fear on the part of his victim. But this reaction is not always necessary to his excitement. One of the classic examples of exhibitionism is the phenomenon of streakers at sporting events. Those who get naked and run onto the field during play, exposing themselves to those in the stands, as well as those watching on television. Second, fetishism, arousal from non-living objects, or pagpukaw mula sa mga bagay na walang buhay. Fetishism involves a person having a strong liking or need for a particular object or activity which gives them sexual pleasure and excitement. For example, the person becomes sexually aroused by wearing or touching the object. Another example is the object of a fetish could be an article of clothing, such as underwear, rubbing clothing, women's shoes, or women's underwear or lingerie. Third, fruiteurism, touching or rubbing one's body or genitals to non-consenting people. Fruiteurism is the act of touching or rubbing one's genitals up against a non-consenting person in a sexual manner. Fruiteurism involves recurrent, intense, sexually arousing fantasies, sexual urge, or behaviors involving touching and rubbing against a non-consenting person. Such behaviors commonly occur in crowded public places like buses or train. Fourth, pedophilia, arousal from children. Characterized by sexual interest in prepubescent children or attempts to engage in sexual acts with prepubescent children. Nailarawan sa pamamagitan ng sexual na interes sa mga batang prepubescent o mga pagtatangka na gumawa ng mga sexual na gawain. Next, sexual masochism, arousal from actual suffering or humiliation. Sexual arousal to the act of being humiliated, beaten, bound, or made to suffer in some other manner. An example of masochism is a person who likes being hurt during sex. Next, sexual sadism, arousal from actual suffering or humiliation. Sexual sadism that causes significant distress or significant functional impairment or is acted on with a non-consenting person. An example, at its most extreme, sexual sadism involves illegal activities such as rape, torture, and even murder, in which case the death of the victim produces sexual excitement. Next, transvestic fetishism, arousal from wearing clothing by the opposite sex during sexual activities. Transvestic fetishism is having a sexual or erotic interest in cross-dressing. An example, a man who masturbates while wearing women's clothing may develop a clothing fetish and become sexually aroused by merely thinking about wearing women's clothing. Men who enjoy cross-dressing are referred to as transvestites, and the behavior is called transvestic fetishism. Lastly, voyeurism, observing other people engage in sexual activities. The practice of gaining sexual pleasure from watching others when they are naked or engage in sexual activities. Voyeurism is defined as a sexual preference for observing others, typically adults females, engage in intimate activity like bathing, undressing, or engaging in sexual behavior.